11:30 p.m. Fallujah. 11:30 p.m. Fallujah. Another sleepless night.
I've heard how some people have said that I've changed, that I'm not what I was, how it really is a shame. The thoughts in the heads manifest on the brow like bad scars from ill feeling, they themselves around. So hateful of anyone that is happy or free. They live all their lives without looking to see the light that has lighted the world.
Good. Hello, I'm Anonymous, and this is Part 7 of It's All in Your Head, a laugh-a-minute grab bag of religious misconception, spiritual imagination, and why the two don't gel anymore. Your idea of God, it's all in your head until otherwise substantiated. We demand a consensus of human consciousness on this question. We see all the world's religion, and old or new, they exist among all people everywhere. We see they are all obviously formed and biased by the cultural and ethnic heads that invented them. Obviously, the spiritualizing gene is common to all humans, but what they make of it is entirely up to their regionally unique imaginations. So, a little more respect for our heads as the bearers of this universal spiritual impulse, an amazing and still little understood organ, our brains. They are so eager to bond our internal impulses to whatever external symbols we invent to embody these impulses. From the child's doll or action figure to the faith healer, Jesus. Christianity is full of supernatural dolls, angels, saints, prophets, and martyrs, all dressed up somewhere outside our heads to represent something important inside our heads. Just like the children we all once were, we have dolls and speak to them. We give the doll a name, a presence in our heads, and we talk to it as if we are not talking to ourselves, as if the relationship to the doll is not all in our own heads. Well, obviously, and Moses can attest to this, it's tough to get rid of craven images, an essential element in the paganism which carried the development of all human spirituality for so long. In the gradual changeover from polytheism to monotheism, Islam had to ban the creation of idols or divine imagery entirely. The human urge to worship dolls was so persistent. Christianity warned against it, but thrived on its imagery and statues nevertheless. Great art? You bet. And about as real as Hollywood? Exactly. Heads up, It's All in Your Head, Part 7.
From the cradle bars comes a beckoning voice that sends you spinning. You have no choice.
Let us have faith.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuning in temporarily to the world of Renegade Radio Broadcasting, for real though.
Are you? I am not a police officer.
Broadcasting over the edge.
I am a police officer.
Breaking into
I am not a police officer.
real deal. The world of...
Hello? Hello?
Say hello.
Hi.
Do not say hello.
Oh, that's right, huh? What you up to?
That's the quickest way to get disconnected. Don't say hello.
Yeah, You know, I'm a pantheist, and you want to hear some pantheist stories?
I don't know why. I'll leave that to the experts to figure out.
Well, not only am I a pantheist, but I'm an organic farmer, and I've seen some remarkable things. Would you care to hear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was farming in this one big field, and every 5 years, it was like the 17-year cicadas, you know, they come out. But every 5 years, the slugs came up. Billions of slugs. And unfortunately, I had to kill a whole bunch of them. It was like genocide. But they were eating my dollars, actually. And I came upon these five slugs, and they were slowly
You are too slowly.
They were slowly going around and around, each of them screwing the one in front.
Now, how do you know they were screwing? Do you know what snails do when they screw?
No, these were slugs.
Slugs?
And I know how slugs and snails, they have a penis coming out of their head, and they have a.
Don't we all?
No, they have a. What do you call it? An orifice on the other side of their head.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what happened?
Well, they were just having the finest time in the world.
Excellent story.
While life is more unconventional and perturbing for you, you have a fine sense of rhythm and enjoy dancing.
The scientific method, Freud writes, is our only source of knowledge. The Ten Commandments, according to Freud, come from human experience, not from revelation.
Christianity was mainly associated for me with ugly architecture, ugly music, and bad poetry.
And an attempt to make small talk. So he said something like, it's a nice day.
See if it works for you.
And the great Knox said, what do you mean by nice? And on what grounds do you attribute those qualities to this day? And it was realized that this is not a man to make small talk with.
He was...
There's something that could be added here, and that is the involvement of Anne Catherine Emmerich, who lived 1774 to 1824, a German mystic and a stigmatic. Why do I bring her name up?
Because she was a major influence on Mel Gibson in terms of his making this movie. The claim has been that it's based on the Gospels, but the Gospels really aren't a screenplay, and they aren't even a treatment of a screenplay. They're a very, very brief outline for such a long movie, and he took a lot of the scenes directly from her mystical visions.
Right, and to summarize an awful lot, Brentano published her writings, and then they were enlarged upon, and what you have at the end, according to an excellent piece that appeared in America Magazine a weekly journal of opinion earlier this year, and that is that the the net result of this is that we are almost compelled to draw the conclusion that much of this is devout fiction as opposed to being in any way drawn from in any real way drawn from the gospel.
Man who taught me to think. A hard, satirical atheist. A man as honest as daylight. His attitude to Christianity was, for me, the beginning of adult thinking.
Galileo tried to tell us then scientifically, look at this.
What came before the Big Bang?
We didn't want to listen.
What came before the Big Bang?
The religion threw Galileo into house arrest for 2 or 3 years. Why? Not because of his science, that's silliness, because of his theology.
I can't deal with that because that's
where it all
one of the
started.
Challenges, but that is closer to my professional interest.
That's exactly why I said
I think that it's amazing that we can actually talk with a straight face about the universe back to the time when it was a millisecond old.
The theology taught that we were the center of the universe. We were God's rational and best creatures.
We can say that because we understand the physics, we have actual fossils that date from that period.
When the little telescope, when he handed the Pope a telescope and said, look, we're not the center.
But going right back to the very beginning.
They wouldn't even pick up the telescope.
But going right back to the very beginning.
That's dogmatism.
We can't be confident, and the reason for that is that right back at the beginning, the conditions were so extreme that we don't understand the relevant science.
And that's what we have to be very careful of.
We need some new breakthroughs to understand what's going on. So one of the challenges of 21st century science is going to be to understand the physics that allows us to unify Einstein's theory with the micro world, and then perhaps we'll understand whether our Big Bang is one of many, and perhaps whether we can understand what happened beforehand. I suspect we'll actually find that we have to think about space and time in a more complicated way.
Do you have anything in common with the religious right?
I have Jesus in common. That's enough for me, provided that we're all allowed to talk about and to hold in our hearts that aspect of the Christ life that we really believe must be raised at this time.
You know, we used to have 3 dimensions, forwards and backwards, left and right, up and down.
And what are those? What are the moral issues that you would like to see us pursuing as a people, as a country right now?
Well, I believe we got the cue on the mountain. I think...
The Sermon on the Mount?
I do.
Jesus.
I do. The Beatitudes, as far as I'm concerned, are the most overlooked and underdeveloped aspect of Christian scripture.
And time just ticking away. But there may be extra dimensions to think about which are crucial in understanding the Big Bang.
Probably night. Actually, we're going to Calistoga. Oh, you're going about that? Yeah, it's so absurd. Actually, I'm going to like the mud, bath, whatever the hell it is.
For all the people who are watching who don't know what the Beatitudes are, what are you talking about?
Well,
the Sermon on the Mount.
The Sermon on the Mount.
Well, that's right, and that's what's so silly about this claim of Mel Gibson and, frankly, of some others, like including Billy Graham, who's claimed that, you know, when he saw the film, he felt like he was a bystander, like it was a real TV documentary or something.
Choose to play any of these you want to or not. Could we live forever?
Jesus gets up, faces a crowd who's saying to him, what do we do now?
I mean, this is clearly a film that comes out of the visions of a lot of people, Mel Gibson one of them, and this Emmerich person another.
And he said, remember the poor.
This goes actually a little bit further.
Well, of course, some people say that perhaps our brains can be downloaded in some way, but I doubt that our sort of material fabric can last that long.
Keep the poor as your criteria.
This piece written by O'Malley, John W. O'Malley, a Jesuit, he says that the Emmerich-Brentano papers in them are perhaps best treated as devout fiction, or to put it more harshly, as well-intentioned frauds. That's how her original writings evolved and were added to.
We have 1 out of every 318 people on this planet this morning, Bill, are refugees. They're following garbage cans in the back of restaurants around the world. They're following the resources we took from their countries that are now jobs in somebody else's country.
So that has to be said in connection with this.
They're the poor.
The poor. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice. We've got somehow or other to recognize that when we go into a country and pay a little kid 20 cents an hour for a 70-hour week to make our shoes and our jeans, we have to ask ourselves, how is it we can export our industry, but we can't export our fair labor standards?
Let us have faith. Let us have faith. Let us have faith.
It's funny how people just won't accept change, as if nature itself they prefer rearranged. So hard to move on when you're down in a hole where there's so little chance to experience growth. I'm grateful to anyone that is happy or free, for giving me hope while I'm looking to see the light that has lighted the
The Brozone perspective is that you worship the path of Bro.
Like a drug to some people.
The subgenius has Bob.
Believe they've had
Brozone, we've got
great insight
path of
or
Bro.
at least some level in their religion.
BRO,
They-
GOD, both 3 letters.
They get a rush.
That's pretty much it. It's not very much different than any other religion, but is any religion different than another religion, really?
And perfection.
And when you see people who are really devout and really into their religion, they almost look like they're a little spaced out on something. And I think the brain rewards itself when the person thinks they've, made some connection with the divine, or even when a scientist finally makes a breakthrough and realizes he understands a problem, the brain rewards itself with a little chemical boost or something.
Well, that's why we do the compound of Bro. There's no other way to really achieve that state. That the drug itself, and we know it's a drug, pushes us right into the religious arena. And in that experience, we're A, able to understand the incredibleness of the Bro, and B, we're able to understand how all religious feeling is just based on some sort of chemical compound that or chemical process rather, that happens in one's own head.
Well, that's right. But you can,
reportedly someone just bit by a deer over.
It seems like you can either get it from just, making a discovery honestly, and then your brain rewards you, or you can sort of fool your brain into thinking it got something. And religion seems to be like, this organized way to think you've made these achievements and get that reward.
Listen, hold on a second. Did you ever consider the fact that when these rewards come, it's like achievements in reverse?
I'm sorry, achievement. What's like achievements in reverse?
Sir, I'm actually hearing something. It's kind of like a police channel. Hold on 1 second here, sir. Sorry,
okay.
Hold on. Yes, sir. What the hell are you doing? Sir, now when we get to religious achievements, it's almost like a cornucopia.
What is that sissy boy talking about?
Sir, are you hearing this policeman? Why am I getting this policeman? Are you hearing the cop, sir?
It does sound like dispatch, doesn't it?
It sounded more realistic with the feedback.
I got your feedback right here.
But you can either, earn your rewards in your mind, or you can sort of get them with religion. And I think that makes religion popular.
I agree. Well, I was thinking, too, the religion...
Never mind him. He's under arrest.
But you see, sometimes you see these great scientists, even Einstein, looked a little freaked out. And I think that's just because he earned himself so many rewards with his great thoughts. And sometimes evangelists, whether your brain honestly earns it or fools itself into thinking it's earned it, they get the same glow, that same look.
Well, I think history tells us everything. If you can, you should try to find Dr. Oslo Norway's book, Intelligence is Temporary. It's out of print now, but you can still find it in some used shops. And he makes the point, over, 700 or 800 pages, that our intelligence is basically temporary. It's only good for a short time, and then you're wrong. In other words, you can be right for a time, and then you're wrong, and that's without changing your mind at all.
Well, ultimately you die, and then it's gone anyway.
I mean, you go back to how many hundreds of years did people assume the Earth was flat and just talk about it that way and think about it that way, and were very quite sure in their own heads that the Earth was flat? Of course, look at it, I'm walking on it, it's flat. And so that intelligence was intelligence of its time, and it was considered the highest scientific knowledge of the time. The Earth is flat. Of course it is. Look at it.
Didn't Stephen Hawking recently say he changed his mind about black holes and whether anything could get out of them? I think he said he's convinced now that...
Yes. I don't understand exactly what the change was, but he did change his mind recently, and everyone's commenting on it. I wish we knew in what way he changed his mind, but no one cares to explain that to us. But anyway, we probably wouldn't understand.
I think it was something about the event horizon. Quantum mechanics says there's a probability that a particle and an antiparticle will be created spontaneously, and right at the edge of the event horizon, there's a chance that one of them will get sucked in and the other won't. And that leads, the one that doesn't escapes the black hole, and that's how you get radiation out of a black hole.
Yeah, and then there was the sun going around the Earth. Of course, look at it. Look at the sky. It goes over every day. It travels across the sky. You can see it. Our senses are not incorrect. The sun goes around the Earth.
At one point, every respectable scientist believed the Earth was flat. At
yes,
one point.
Yes, and that the sun went around the Earth pretty much until Galileo. So all that knowledge was perfectly correct in its own time, assumed to be correct, uncontested generally, and assumed to be the truth. And there it is. How wrong can you be? Well, you can be very, very, very wrong and think you are right. That's history, and religion runs through a good part of it. A big, big part of it. A big chunk of it.
I think you can continue to be correct as long as you update your base of knowledge.
Well, no, certain things are just wrong, just become wrong when something else takes its place. That is right.
And you update it, and it's what science is about.
Well, how do you update the sun going around the Earth? I mean, there's no updating.
There were competing schools of thought. Now, it turned out that Aristarchus had the right cosmology. He figured out, using geometric logic, that the sun was in the center of the universe, but that was only one of several ideas. And
That's wrong too, by the way.
What did I say?
Sun is the center of the universe.
Well, the sun is the center of the solar system in a way. But obviously, he also knew that the stars were further away than all the planets as well. But then the books that got copied the most once the Dark Ages began were those that said that the Earth was in the center of the universe.
Well, that was a theological imperative of the time, and so people just carried it on so they wouldn't offend the church.
It was partly theological, but in ancient Greek times there were different hypotheses, and in the marketplace of ideas, the one that wins is always the one that's right. But the interesting thing is that the conception of the flat Earth was not original. In other words, the Earth was known to be round by the ancient Greeks, and books were written on that subject by Eratosthenes and others.
Right.
However, the Christians, when they took over, they wiped away all of that intellectual thought that dared to look at nature for its own sake. And a Christian Luddite named Cosmos actually wrote that the flat Earth was the real way, because the Earth had to be shaped like the tabernacle, according to some scriptural citation.
Yeah, well, that's why I think Dr. Oslo Norway was so extremely wise in titling his book Intelligence is Temporary. It doesn't say, see, it's temporary. It can go out and then come back and come again and then be gone again. Like here, I'm going to spend all the way till Christmas trying to convince you there is no God. And after I'm done, people are going to go right back thinking there is one. You wait and see.
But if the universe responds to thought in an intimate fashion in a quantum level, then people create God just by believing in it. Although if you do not believe in God, then you will not be subject to the rules of people that do.
That's right. It's a club of what's the word?
But if you what is it? Membership,
No, I mean like self-justifying,
Well, if you were a Christian though, and you honestly believe that you led a bad life, you would be in hell after you died. If you were a Christian, if you really led a wonderful life, you'd be in whatever kind of heaven your denomination outlines in its theology.
That's pretty much theory too, since you can't prove it.
I think that it is there is support for this idea based on...
There is support for the fact that there are people in hell right now?
For people who believe that, yes.
You just believe that if they believe that it's yes.
I also believe that those Japanese that crashed their planes into aircraft carriers are in the lovingly beautiful heaven that their emperor promised them. And that Muhammad Atta and his cronies are in that beautiful Muslim virgin-filled wonderland that they were told that they could expect.
Paradise, please.
I believe that convictions, be them intelligence-based or not, they cause the mind's big card trick on the body. Like the other caller was talking about. And
yes, there is something to be said also for the relatively recent idea that there is a religious center, a religious experience, chemical-induced center of the brain, which in the late 1960s a lot of people began to stimulate with LSD and psychedelic substances.
I've had religious epiphanies, or they've appeared to me that way on psychedelics.
It's a chemical. There is a chemical key in the brain for religious experience. In other words.
Yes, we haven't gotten into the chemistry of this
but
the brain.
There's lots of keys like that are just opened by knowledge, like Einstein. Like the caller was talking about Einstein. That's a great example of somebody who just who really earned the
fresh way and are able to articulate it. That is the secret of genius of these people. They somehow are fortunate enough to have a point of view which enables them to see a perspective denied to most mortals. Although they're probably deficient in their lives in many areas that normal people would find necessary, though.
But it's all chemical.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think I've been listening to this program, and I totally get what you guys are saying, but it's really not biochemical, I think it's almost something that you believe spiritually, I mean, it's really something to think about. And I like to say Suicide Man should really be removed from the air because his negativity is bringing me down. Suicide Man?
I don't know. Go kill yourself. Chemistry in the brain. Yes, it's all chemical, actually. It's electrochemical. You are sending little electrical impulses all through your brain on synapses. And then combined with that is this chemical thing where I don't know, there are misfires. If you think it's so reliable, actually I was thinking about the brain today and how amazing it is that it works so well, that our brains work so well. When you think about it, it's pretty darn reliable. It does all these amazing things, like a whole bunch of them without even thinking about it. It lets us see and hear and smell and translates all those senses in our heads into what we call sight, sound, and smell. And it does it so reliably. There's never a time when you take a sniff and you can't smell anything. Never a time when you don't hear anything. Never a time when you don't see anything. It's working all the time. And it just works so great. It's so reliable. It's so amazingly good at everything it does, not to mention thinking, that I hate to say anything against the brain. But I do believe it does misfire occasionally in almost everyone. Almost everyone has had the deja vu experience. I've been here before, I've seen this before, and you know darn well you haven't. And so your brain, naturally, being fictionally oriented, goes off into afterlives and previous lives and all kinds of things like that to explain this experience, which is probably chemical misfire. In other words, when you go to some place you have been before, your brain is doing something with your memory, sending some synapses over to the memory to see if you've been here before, and sure enough, there is a memory that says you've been here before and you remember being there before. That's the feeling. Deja vu is a misfire. It's going someplace and seeming to find a memory of what you're experiencing that isn't there. A misfire. It's called deja vu. Everybody's had it. Almost everybody's had it. And it doesn't happen very often, but there it is. A minor little misfire, a glitch that has not been fixed in version whatever we are. And it doesn't cause many problems, but it's probably an electrochemical misfire causing deja vu. Well, it's not the only one.
You've hit on an important point, Mr.
Thank you.
The idea of a misfire is actually a very profound one for explaining a lot of what would otherwise be unexplainable.
Of course.
Certain things like, of course that might make it too convenient a hypothesis, but nevertheless, certain religious epiphanies, certain revelations by individuals.
Yeah, hearing voices, a whole thing. You know, it's like I'm amazed at how well it works, but we have to make room for the fact that this amazing thing does screw up every once in a while.
There has to be some error rate.
Of course, and look at the insane people. You know, there's a bunch of misfires.
Insane people fascinate me. I love arguing with them, especially schizophrenics.
Right, they're walking around telling you they're hearing voices. You know there are no voices. You know it's all in their head.
And yet, when you have the religious authorities claiming revelation by voices speaking in their head, they're not put in insane institutions. They are revered as the bearers of grand knowledge from afar.
Yeah, Joan of Arc was probably a manic depressive, maybe schizophrenic, hearing the voices, but, you know, they had no words for that at that time. She just was a little odd, and, gee, she seems inspired.
But this continues to the present day, I think. We're getting back to the chemical nature of religious experience. There seems to be some kind of phenomenon that semi-randomly operates. It could be related to electrical discharges from the Earth, like what occurs in earthquakes to cause earthquake lights. I'm thinking of something like that because
you could have external electronic forces affecting the brain. We're sure saying that cell phones do that.
Well, it's my hypothesis that there is some randomly occurring natural phenomenon which has local influence on at least some people, which causes them, like nowadays when it happens to people, a lot of them say that they were taken up in a flying saucer, for instance. A lot of UFO abduction stories would fit the idea of a transcendent experience that is experienced, and whatever your sense of the ultimate is implanted, is laid over this, so your brain would have some framework that it could relate to deal with the experience. So
And will you try not to be so negative?
Well, and you know, some of the times of greatest expression, or when you get into this belief stuff, the idea of belief at the simplest level is just weak will, but at the level where it's very functionally apparent, it's termed focal schizophrenia, and then the extremely fervent believers are clearly viewed as schizophrenic, like you would say, Joan of Arc. But the rest of folks believing in anything, the medical condition there's a schizophrenia associated with that one occluded area where rather than reason they divert to the easier belief. And that compare that though to perception and the ideas of relativity rather than the altar of belief in Einstein, but the philosopher Einstein. Well, the Earth is flat when it's perceived as flat, and the function of walking on it is flat, but it's round when it's perceived as round, and the function of seeing it is a sphere in space.
Well, using your brains, you can tell that the Earth is round by observation, though, of the external
You reason that, but you as an individual may believe that, and that's your focal schizophrenia at play, but you don't really know it. You experience it in many ways. Sometimes it's hilly, you go up, you fall down. When you fall down, you're not falling around a surface, you're falling from a higher spot to a lower spot. You may want to believe that the world is round, and others may want to believe that it's flat. Those illnesses are different than perceiving and questioning what we perceive.
You can see the top.
You may be in a pile of mud hut, or you may be an arrogant, kind of a Nordic person.
Before the rest of the
But what you believe in is different than what you are. What you believe in is your disease, your illness.
Your illness?
Yes, your illness. What you believe in is your illness.
By the way, I have no negativity. Sometimes suicide is a very positive thing, but that aside, the shadow of the Earth cast on the moon during a lunar eclipse is always round, no matter what part of the Earth is turned toward the moon when it happens.
Actually not. You say that, and you say it from a point of schizophrenic belief.
Of observation, and the
when
only
you see the shadow hit the mountains and the trees, it's all angular.
The
it's
Earth's
not
shadow
straight lines.
always has a round edge. The only object that always
The
has
Earth
a
is
round
not even
shadow
round.
is a
It's
sphere.
lumpy. It's lumpy. It's lumpy. It's sharp. It's got deep spots. It's got high spots. It's got rocks. It's got trees. It's got lumpy little soft people with soft ideas and their soft minds, and they believe in them.
You're not actually having a serious discussion. You're just trying to bullshit me.
Oh, I wouldn't do that on the radio because it's kind of offensive, but I would say that you're philosophically stuck.
What are you, a bookworm or something?
Eat paper. It's good for you.
Well, so in the end, I don't really get your argument. Are you saying the world is flat or just bumpy with lots of holes?
No. I'm saying people believe things, but neither of those is correct or wrong. What is functionally functional? When the car drives along,
well, I think
sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down.
Yeah, but the Earth, we're talking
scale
about
issue. It's relativity. People want to treat relativity.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Earth, and from a distance, it certainly is round.
From a distance, but are you ever at that distance? I haven't gotten to go up into space, so it's neither round nor flat.
The ancient Greeks knew that the Earth was round by two simple observations. One is that the tops of the ships always appear before the rest of the ship as they approach from out to sea, and the other is that the shadow...
Yeah, my psychiatrist said...
Oops, I cut him off. I cut him off accidentally. You have no idea how many buttons I have here.
Deja vu is all about low sugar.
I'll finish his thought. Long before Galileo, the seafaring men of the world had a pretty good intuition that the world was not flat. Because wait. Let's not talk over each other all the time.
Sure.
And so they would see the sails of approaching ships coming up over the horizon before they could see the body of the ship, meaning it was coming up over a curve. They could see the top before the bottom. And this led to some common thought that, yes, the Earth is not really flat.
Logic.
But these seafarers didn't have any sway with the church. No siree. The church never went out in boats. They didn't care.
This is neat. We're actually talking to the weatherman.
Correct. But
no, you're not.
It's on different kinds of functional planes. You know, belief is where you're not talking about where you're actually functioning and existing. Whereas experience or perception, you know, it's not like they're contradictory until you want to believe exclusively that one thing is the only thing.
That's it. The blood sugar was low in the Vatican.
I think quite often it is. They're in there kind of, you know, hyperventilating and breathing a lot of incense fumes and stuff.
So when sailors would report that we saw the Mass first, they'd say, you're having deja vu again, guys. Go back and figure it out.
The other absolute proof, though, was that when the shadow of a vertical pole was the angle of that shadow on the longest day of the year at noon was measured at two different locations on the Earth, considerable distance. There was an obvious difference in the angle. It was absolutely straight up and down with no shadow from the equatorial location, and then further up in the temperate areas, it cast a very noticeable shadow, and so they were able to determine by that angle and the distance what the size of the Earth was.
Are you trying to prove to us the Earth is round?
I'm saying that the ancient Greeks knew that the Earth was round, but that knowledge became lost thanks to Christianity.
It was temporary knowledge. Exactly.
Don't say hello.
So is Christianity.
Yep, Christianity promotes stupidity.
So blessed are
Blessed are those who
seek
hunger
justice.
and thirst for justice. Blessed are those who mourn. Remember those who are in grief. Those mothers with dry breasts in Africa right now are mothers. And we're pro-life. Where are we? Where are we in Darfur? What do we have an army in Iraq for, killing other mothers, when with the power of this country, if this is going to be a moral country, blessed are the peacemakers, not the warmongers who are simply planting seeds of war for the next generation.
The impression I got was that religion in general, though utterly false, was a natural growth, a kind of endemic nonsense into which humanity tended to blunder.
The war was a kind of crusade to the youth of Europe. They were convinced that the enemy were demons. They were convinced that theirs was a cause worth dying for. And 9 million did.
I have gone to sleep marching, and woken again and found myself still marching. The frights, the cold, the smell of high explosive, the landscape of sheer earth without a blade of grass, the horribly smashed men still moving like half-crushed beetles.
Lewis was on intimate terms with pain. He was wounded in World War I. He saw the sergeant who had saved his life blown up next to him. In other words, he knew, as that generation did, the horrors of the Great War.
He thought God was at fault for causing the suffering he saw in the First World War. That was God's fault. He shouldn't have allowed that to happen. He thought he was a blackguard. That is the way he described God in his own poetry.
14th of May, 1918. Paddy has been missing for over a month and is almost certainly dead. Of all my own particular set at Oxford, he has been the first to go. And it is a bitter irony to remember that he was always certain that he would come through.
After the war, Lewis returned to Oxford. Good to his word, he set up house with his dead comrades' mother and sister, Janie and Maureen Moore.
She was mother surrogate, she was a companion, and of course she was a comfort to him as well. I mean, there was this household, it was home for Lewis. Home, this idea of home. This matters very much.
The early loss of my mother, great unhappiness at school, and the shadow of the last war, and presently the experience of it, had given me a very pessimistic view of existence. My atheism was based on it.
Life experience turned Lewis away from faith in God, but Freud believed that his atheism was the result of an intellectual process. To the young Viennese neurologist, religion could not explain the complexity of the human condition. This problem led him to the most critical insight of his life and his work.
Freud gets a fellowship to go to Paris, and he's going to go to Paris to work on neurological diseases of children with the man who is the world's greatest expert, a man named Jean-Martin Charcot. Charcot is working with hysterics. That is, people who have physical symptoms that don't seem to have a physical cause.
What Charcot demonstrated to Freud was that he could induce symptoms through hypnosis that mimicked and mimed the same symptoms the hysterics showed without hypnosis. So he could induce paralysis, convulsions, blindness, and it made Freud realize there were mental processes that go on very significantly outside of conscious awareness.
He puzzled about hypnosis. How is it that I can affect a human being's mind without his consciousness? What goes on here? That there's a powerful influence without the knowledge and the cognition of the patient.
Freud returned to Vienna convinced that neurotics could be treated with hypnosis. Then he went a step further. Through experimentation, he found he could get the same result simply by letting his patients speak in free association. No one had tried that before.
There is still very little happening to me externally, but internally something very interesting. I am led to my own dreams.
You go to my head and you linger like a haunting refrain.
Let us have faith.
And I find you spinning round in my brain.
Let us have faith.
That's right. He's drawing from all sorts of resources. He's drawing from
in a glass of champagne. You go to my head like a sip of sparkling burgundy brew. And I find, yes, I find the very mention of you. Just like a kicker, just like a kicker in a julep or two. The thrill of a thought that you might give a fool to me casts its spell over me. Still I say to myself, you fool, just get a hold of yourself. Can't you see love was meant to be? You
Let us have faith.
With a smile that makes my temperature rise. You're like a summer with 1,000 hot Julys. Oh, baby, you intoxicate my soul with your eyes.
Let us have faith.
That this heart of mine hasn't a ghost of a chance.
Let us have
this crazy mixed up romance. Baby, you go to my head.
Let us have faith.
Now, do any of these arguments make sense today?
Taking Freud's view, I'm a fan of Freud and a fan of his arguments, but just because you wish that something is so doesn't mean that it isn't so.
Satan never sleeps. He walks behind you through the night and through the day. Silently he creeps. He's always there to put temptation in your way. So if you're burning with desire, he'll find a way to fan the fire. Then in the embers of the flame, you'll have your foolish heart to blame. Oh, Satan has a plan.
Let us have might.
He's out to capture you.
That makes faith.
In any way he can.
Right.
And once more, please. Ever since the world began, he's tried to come between a woman and a man.
Let us have right.
No matter if you're great or small, he knows there's evil in us all.
Makes might right.
And that is why Satan never sleeps.
There was a note of pleading, seemingly. Make it more a positive statement of your belief.
Right. Right. Let us have faith. That faith makes might. Right.
What Freud's saying is that if you look at the data and you want to take the most parsimonious approach to things,
And one more try, please.
up with the simplest theory,
Broke apart a little. Up a little more, just a little more firmness.
he'd say, well,
let us have faith.
Maybe instead of saying that a God's there, it makes more sense to say that these are universal human wishes.
That right might makes right faith.
And the best explanation as to why people around the world come up with different conceptions of God is because there's this universal need for explanations, comfort, order.
And one more try, please.
In the face of chaos and disorder.
A little more.
Would you say then that these are feelings?
Just a little more firmness.
Faith makes might.
That was very good. Shall we try once more?
Might makes right.
That was very good. I'd like to take one more go around.
right. Faith makes right might.
From that position, the 8130 aircraft you can still hear droning overhead.
U.S. gunships hammered targets in the northwest corner of town. The same part of Fallujah they hit last night. This after a day of intense fighting in 3 different parts of the city. The Marines tried to seize a train station.
We got him.
واحد تعدد في الآراء راديو FM.
It's All in Your Head, Part 7, tonight on Over the Edge, KPFA, KPFB in Berkeley, KFCF Fresno, KZFR in Chico.
Yes, I totally am really into this series. I'm really hoping that you might extend it towards Christmas. But I had a quick question.
Sure.
Yes. Now, do you think that we're in some sort of spatial relationship? You know, what I'm trying to say...
Am I risking a spatial relationship?
No, excuse me, sir. I mean spatial, like S-P-A-T-I-A-L.
Right.
Yes. I'm almost
Special.
thinking that... Well, sir, no. I'm almost thinking that really religion is kind of... It's really physical, but at the same time mental. You feel what I'm saying?
Yes, I think so.
My question, though, I heard someone earlier address a gentleman, I think his name was Suicide Man. Is he still on the line?
No, I'm anonymous.
Suicide Man.
Right.
I really, some other caller agreed that you're maybe too negative, and I think that person
Negative,
really
yeah.
knew what he was doing. Do you believe that... Suicide Man, are you there? I think I lost you.
Hello?
Suicide Man, we have a fan club of yours.
No, tell me not to say hello.
Suicide Man.
Okay, you're taking over now.
Could you please... Oh, sorry about that, Mr. Rick. Go ahead.
Okay,
I have a Freud story for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, you know who Carl Jung is, right? You know who that guy is?
Yeah, of course I know who that is.
Okay. Well, I was reading Psychology Today in the late 70s. They were exchanging letters between Carl Jung and Freud. They were writing about this particular case.
Sure. The famous Freudian slip case. I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, I hesitate to bring this up because
Sure.
I'm gonna.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm gonna switch.
Hey, don't do that, sir.
I have a more refined response to last week's question.
Sure, I do too. Go ahead.
What it becomes if you don't believe in God is Lord of the Flies.
Yes, exactly. It's almost
Real
like Lord of the
quick.
Rings, sequel
I am
3.
at your service, sir.
Yes. Suicide Man, yes.
All right, 3 at once.
Quick question, Suicide Man.
Wow, I just
we have a
discovered
lot
that.
of your fans, and they're almost hoping that you will live out your name, if you know what I'm talking about.
You mean
You
I
almost
could have?
hope that?
I could wait a minute. I could have an unlimited number of calls on this.
Sir, Mr. Host, I have a question.
Oh yes, I'm sorry to interrupt
Oh,
with
no,
that
no.
technicality, but
Yeah, really.
But I
yeah.
just discovered that after all this time. With
All
these,
right.
With these new phones having been unexplained to us, basically.
I'll tell you what.
Sir.
If I ever find out that Over the Edge is gone, if they announce that it's its last show, then Suicide Man will commit suicide on the air.
Why do you talk like that? Why do you bring that up?
Something like that. That's ridiculous. We all love you. You're the best.
So you don't want me to do that?
But
It's
Suicide
not
Man,
the
real quick question.
I'm not making a threat or anything. I'm not
He
making no
knows
threat.
you don't want him to do that.
Okay, but my question is this, though. Sorry to interrupt, but
He's
they
trying
won't
to
let me talk
provoke
here.
you.
All right, here's my question.
You've heard about him.
Why
He's
is
all
his
negative.
name Suicide Man? How about Suicide Person? Do we need to bring the gender into this?
It's a long story.
You know, what about Suicide Entity? Why man?
Back when KPFA ran this program on Sunday mornings, they were noticing a significant number of deaths by suicide.
Yes, and we go now to one of those programs.
واحد تعدد في الآراء رشدة FM.
American troops have tried to advance to the Jolan area, where the resistance fighters have taken up positions. American gunships have pounded the city. Thick smoke has been seen. Loudspeakers from the mosques have urged people to resist.
They say insurgents have used the station as a staging ground for attacks.
We are now joined by our reporter in Fallujah.
One Marine commander, he was telling us this is certainly not fighting in open fields anymore. This is close quarters, hand-to-hand combat.
It is now obvious that no one in Fallujah trusts the Americans. They believe that the Americans don't keep their promises.
Today they called in an airstrike to back them up. Attack helicopters pounded the station.
The Americans had promised not to invade the city. They said they would only act in self-defense, but they have violated the ceasefire by trying to move in closer. Despite their promises not to do so. These violations have led to this situation where no one trusts the Americans.
Several neighboring buildings.
These Fallujah residents were not allowed to return back to their homes.
One of several airborne attacks that took place today.
Quite a dramatic scene from our rooftop here on the southern edge of the city. We can see large, massive plumes of gray and black smoke over the skyline.
تعدد في الآراء رشدة FM.
After the occupation forces attacked.
The Marines still insist this is not an offensive operation.
We are from Fallujah. We have been waiting here since 6 a.m.
They say they are acting only in self-defense.
We are not foreigners. Is this democracy? Is this the freedom Bush promised us, Iraqis? Every night they attack us with bombs.
I have to laugh when you say all out offensive. We've been playing patty cake with these insurgents. We have not begun to do offensive operations. And the world will see that when we do.
The governing council are traitors for accepting this.
There was meant to be a joint patrol with the Americans and the Iraqi police. When the police asked why there was a delay, they were told by the Americans that they were still awaiting orders.
If this is patty cake,
this latest assault is
Fallujah is in deep trouble.
Put an end to all this, which violates the ceasefire.
There's a disconnect.
It is difficult for the ambulances to get through.
Between the images coming out of Fallujah,
we don't know how many people have been killed
and what the U.S. politicians have to say about this.
But we have seen a number of houses on fire.
Situation.
We can hear explosions.
Most of Fallujah is returning to normal.
And see flares.
We're taking heavy fire from our north.
We cross live to our reporter in Fallujah.
Normal?
For news of the latest American attack.
Perhaps for Fallujah.
The American warplanes are still overhead, and
even though
there is now a thick pall of smoke and fire in the Jalan area.
Sometimes it may not look like it from the media reports.
A few minutes ago, we saw some people walking.
There is still a determined
and American snipers opened fire at them.
Aspiration,
and a number were taken to hospital.
On the part of the coalition to maintain a ceasefire.
The Americans claim they have been provoked.
But others are beginning to doubt U.S. intentions.
We are used to these claims. They always claim that they've come under fire.
We have called for a peaceful settlement.
And that they were only responding.
The Fallujah and for other matters in Iraq.
While the people in Fallujah remain committed to the ceasefire.
But as everyone knows,
people here are wondering if they're only responding to fire, why are they moving towards the city centre?
The security portfolio is in the hands of the Americans.
Were you surprised by what has happened?
And they are dealing with it.
The American stance is contradictory.
We have called upon them. No to resort to military means because civilians will be caught in the middle.
On the one hand, they're negotiating, but they continue to be very aggressive.
In the crossfire.
At the same time.
The Secretary General of the UN said the U.S. operation is in danger of fueling the resistance.
Violent military action by occupying power against the inhabitants of an occupied country.
We have learned that the Iraqi delegation has been talking to the American officials in Baghdad.
Will only make matters worse.
And claim that the Americans broke the ceasefire without any explanation.
It's definitely time.
As to the situation here, everything is closed. American snipers target everything that moves.
Time now for those who prefer restraint and dialogue.
Iraq's first call-in talk radio station takes its name from Baghdad's Tigris River, Dijla in Arabic. The format is winning favor with Iraqis as a way to convey their wants and needs to their government.
When it comes to blunting your taste for the normal,
and to the rest of the city,
we're on the grinding edge.
This morning's open phones yield a harvest of complaints.
The Universal Media Network.
People are too scared to leave their homes.
To make their voices heard.
Afraid of the American snipers.
Mostly about the university exams.
But it must be made very, very plain to those who do not share these values and would replace them with the idea that all society needs is one book and one rule and one text or one Godhead, whatever it is that they calamitously choose in this respect, or whatever excuse they give it. It must be made unmistakably clear to them that we too have unalterable convictions, that our culture demands respect as well and will exact it if need be. There's no condescension involved here, but there's no masochism either. We don't hold our convictions as acts of faith, but as acts of, as matters of conviction freely arrived at. But let never that be mistaken for weakness.
Why have the Americans launched an attack when the talks appear to be going well?
The spring semester this year was marred by violence across Iraq. Many students and their parents say that's why so many students failed their finals this month.
Before I came on air, I spoke to the Iraqi delegation, and they were shocked by the latest American assault. Now the planes are bombing the military area. I can see them flying low over the city.
There are other things.
Just as the Iraqi delegation were preparing for the next round of talks.
Can be changeable.
But they couldn't leave because of the heavy shell.
Up to the fuqaha.
People do not trust the Americans.
What we call the fuqaha, or the scholars of fiqh, who grasp basically the needs of their time, and they can interpret the Quran and the Sunnah according to those needs.
There was no shooting even after they bombed the city. This has come as a complete surprise. No one was expecting an escalation.
Other popular topics are unemployment and low pay.
That all Muslims are haunted by texts, the greatest text of all being Quran, then the other text is Hadith, which is all written. Then we have the Sharia, then we have the fiqh, and we have an attitude towards that text. It is a very controlled attitude. We call it tafsir, we call it exegesis, we call it commentary, and the fuqaha, the religious scholars, have the right to actually comment on it. We also are very keen on certainty. Now, not many Muslims can handle uncertainty, doubt, and even questioning whether God even exists. Now, one of the great Islamic scholars, Al-Ghazali, did ask that question back in the time of the height of Islamic civilization, and I agree with Gada. Somewhere or other, we've got fossilized. We've got to think about epistemology, the way we know things, how we know things.
Well, in prison, he looked around. He saw that about 1,000 of the brothers had been executed by the regime.
We thought the Americans were working towards a peaceful solution.
He saw young men being subjected, as I say, to mental and physical torture.
What's happening now is unexpected. No one was expecting this.
And he said this has all the marks of what he called the Jahiliyyah.
The talks were going well and there was optimism.
Now, the Jahiliyyah is a term used by Muslims to describe the society in Arabia before the coming of Islam. The term really means the age of ignorance, Jahiliyyah. It was the Prophet Muhammad, when he brought Islam to the Arab people, replaced the pagan establishment of Mecca, with his own Muslim rule. Now, the Jahiliyyah was a term that everybody just used to apply to this period of pre-Islamic Arabia. It has overtones of a sort of ignorant barbarism. But nobody before Sayyid Qutb had dreamt of applying the term Jahiliyyah to people who were professing Muslims. That is what Qutb did. He said this government of President Nasser is Jahili. It is part of the Jahiliyyah. Even though Nasser said he was a Muslim, even though Nasser in his speeches, he would use Islamic terminology when it suited him, he said, nevertheless, this government bears all the marks of this ignorant barbarism. It's Jahili, and we must fight this, just as the Prophet Muhammad fought the Jahiliyyah of his own day. He was giving a green light to say that it was a Muslim duty to fight against your own government.
And there are a lot of calls about the electricity, which is still intermittent.
Look for eyes in the palms of my hands.
You may hear the foghorns of ghost ships, or you may see through the crystal windows gigantic manta rays surging through primordial waves in a sea blasted by silent lightning. There could be others with you, and they may say to you, "My God, but you've been dead all these years," and to others you may say with tears in your eyes, "But how can I know you so well? How can I have missed you so much when I've never even met you before?"
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that. John, a quick question for you. Mr. Joyce.
No quick questions, only quick answers.
Residents and fighters had said they were committed to the ceasefire, but the Americans surprised everyone by breaking the ceasefire. About 50 American troops tried to advance, but they were met by heavy resistance.
We'd like to remind you that
today on the streets of Fallujah, the Marine Corps made its voice heard.
Paul Bremer had issued a deadline for fighters to hand over weapons
through loudspeakers,
which expired tonight,
blaring heavy metal tunes.
But our reporter said,
and leaflets calling on the insurgents to surrender or die,
that no one trusted the Americans.
The resistance responded in kind. Mosques blared chants for jihad.
This is a battle between a massive state and a small city, a city that is just asking to govern and control itself.
Holy war.
Only war can make mankind go away. Oh, pardon me, I didn't realize. Scary, 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 religion. Yeah, I got a question about religion. Is it possible that Jesus actually is baby Jesus?
Suicide Man, I think you're very negative. I hope you're replaced by Chewbacca, aka Steve. And Don Joyce is the man with the golden voice.
This wanted poster offered a $15 million bounty for the heads of 3 U.S. military officials.
Poison at a steady rate.
1 year after the American-led invasion.
That's all they're asking for.
Some local residents took off their shoes, the ultimate Arab insult.
Oblivious to what it is, keep it curious. Gone through a medical specimen, paranoid, mad, kinesthesia.
For example, in Uzbekistan or in Kazakhstan, I mean, the government, the predominant population might be Uzbek or might be Kazakh. But they've also had to deal with these very diverse, ethnic minorities who want their own languages, who want their own kind of social or religious, economic and political setups and their own laws.
White spots in the wake, I'm in a cave of despair. Past over lost grass, trying to cross some air. As weeping clouds float, my neck broke in a row. I've got no tunnel on cold.
So it's been extremely difficult.
I've got no tunnel on cold, and my tunnel's gone cold.
So into this cauldron.
Oblivious to what it is, keep it curious. Gone through a medical specimen, paranoid, mad, killers, devious. Oblivious to what it is, keep it curious. Go to a medical specimen, paranoid, mad, killers, devious.
Suhad Rubai hosts a talk show. She says the format is new to listeners and announcers alike.
You can't say anything. If you call us here in Radio Dijla, you can't say anything.
As I fall asleep, involuntary ideas emerge.
Okay. We are listening.
An undercover Sigmund Freud. There's so much. Chemical imbalance does not explain a distortion in time and space.
Fermenting and simmering in me. Masses of bristling riddles lie round about.
When you talk in radio, there is someone listening to you.
تعدد في الآراء راديو FM
5, 1, 0,
And
8, 4, 8,
can solve this problem.
4, 4, 2, 5.
Maybe it's ministry or important offices.
They lead me through all the events of my childhood.
Yes, events are very deep. Question for Suicide Man. I respectfully beg to differ. Well, I respectfully beg to be Suicide Man, but that's not the point.
Chemical
Suicide Man.
imbalances.
Look at me. I'm talking about suicide. I'm on the radio. Look at me.
I'm talking about the perception of time
I'm talking
being
about
affected
Suicide Man.
by chemical influences.
or electrical influence.
Electrical, I'm Suicide Man, look at me. Woo, I'm on.
Pulsating.
I beg your pardon?
I beg yours. Let's do a beg off, go.
Are you in need of counseling?
I'm Suicide Man.
So anyway, the
whatever.
amount of perceptual influence by these unknown phenomena could easily explain not only the UFO abduction, but most revolutionary religious ideas, however large or small their influence may be.
Don Joyce, the man with the golden voice, Ladies' Choice, People's Choice Award. You know, it's very funny, Suicide Man. Have you ever considered Don Joyce?
I have given you deep understandings and truths. Do with them what thou wilt.
You definitely have, and I really respect it, even though I don't. I really think it's very bad.
I don't demand that you agree, of course.
Well, I don't demand you beg to differ, but that's me. You know?
Boy, you're in a drawling mood.
Boy, you're in a drawling. Hey, Don, I got a question. Can you tell Suicide Man to actually go ahead and do it? You know what I'm talking about.
And
some of the DJs are well known from years back. Majid Salim is greeted like an old friend by many listeners, and that means he doesn't mind teasing a caller he thinks is complaining too much.
And our ratings are up in every demographic, and they're down in every other network.
This sort of vacuum to some extent. I mean, we have the leaders of these countries who are corrupt, as you've sort of implied.
What's the reason? It's the big dick content.
But the Muslims who are being repressed start to organize. And I guess that happened about 10 years ago.
Since Freud primarily wanted to be the explorer of the unconscious, he raised the question, how can I get access to it? What are opening windows to take a look into the unconscious mechanisms? And then he said, dreams. Dreams, while I'm not conscious, my brain produces a variety of images, pictures, and stories beyond my consciousness. So it must be within the unconscious. So the dream gives me access
The object of their disgust, the new Iraqi flag.
To the function of the unconscious.
A symbol, they said, of the infidels.
Salam worked for years at a station run by Saddam Hussein's infamous son, Uday.
Which they proceeded to burn.
In those days, he had to watch his words, or he'd risk a beating by Uday's bodyguards.
U.S. officials maintain the insurgents are a hardcore group of militants, some 1,500 Saddam loyalists and Islamic extremists. But their sympathizers now include countless ordinary Fallujahs. Today, hundreds were stuck at a U.S. checkpoint just outside town, unable to return home because of the fighting. They're pounding us with bombs, he said. Is this the freedom Bush promised us? Some of the Marines themselves sympathize with that sentiment, sympathize even with those willing to take up arms to fight for that sentiment, according to reporters who've been embedded in Fallujah.
I even interviewed some Marines and I said, do you blame these insurgents for fighting for their land? And they said no. They said if somebody came into San Diego, some foreign force, we would do the same thing. We'd just do it better.
There's no question the Marines face an ambiguous mission in Fallujah, imposing peace at gunpoint and forcing a ceasefire by firing back. And the politicians are sending an ambiguous message too, holding out the hand of friendship and backing it up with an iron fist. That's because there are two battles going on here.
Now Salam says he enjoys helping people out, but it's not always with things like lights or plumbing. Salam works several shifts, including a late-night show. He says when it gets dark, the calls turn to heartbreak and romance.
Various groups started to come in. Who are the players now who are, I don't know whether you'd call it posing a threat or just trying to organize Muslims in the area?
Salam has become an expert on the Iraqi teenage dating scene, and he claims to have personally saved at least 5 marriages. Radio Dijla is the brainchild of Ahmed Rikabi, an Iraqi exile with radio experience in Europe.
Well, you know, I think there was a huge Islamic revival in 1991 after the suppression of Islam by the Soviet state for 70 years. And that Islamic revival took many shapes and forms. It took a general interest in piety and coming back to having faith and allowing, you know, tradition and culture and everything that they had from Islamic teachings in the past being revived. And of course it took on the shape of militancy, which was very much inspired, if you like, by the war in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union, the war in Chechnya, and these influences. And what also happened was that you had militant groups in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, Wahhabi groups in Saudi Arabia, coming into Central Asia and really trying to make recruitments. They saw Central Asia as this virgin territory where there was this huge Muslim population, but which didn't know about Islam. So they came in with money, they came in with their own sectarian beliefs, which were alien to Central Asian Islam.
On the streets of Fallujah, the Marines will inevitably win. But in the larger battle for public opinion, at least here, the U.S. may have already lost.
Rikabi brags that his station is a first for the Arab world.
Talk radio is one of the cheapest forms to do radio, but at the same time, one of the most dangerous forms.
The judgment is not at a daily level. Or God, is not like they're pushing us with a little finger over cliffs and pushing cars against other cars to make us die. I don't see it that way. I see it in a much grander scale. So grand, like I said, I always thought it was sort of pretentious to even try to understand. Sometimes I think that we're just a molecule in somebody else's hair in another planet.
My father began to take me with him on his walks and revealed to me his views on the world.
And we think we're this big deal, and one day this guy is gonna cut his hair, and we're gonna our planet's gonna blow.
One time he related to me a story that left a profound impression on my life.
Of radio. In the Arab world, the governments were afraid, and they're still afraid. Of this kind of radio, because you have no control over the calls. Someone might say the wrong words. Someone might criticize heavily the government, the president, or the king.
And we think that it's the end of the universe, and in reality it's just somebody else cutting his hair in some other planet.
Though not the one that he had hoped.
That our rights come from him. The purpose of government is to protect and secure and defend those rights. This is the American view. Both major parties are committed to another view, a socialist view of government that says that the purpose is to redistribute wealth. So I ask you to consider what we're trying to accomplish, which is a restoration of the American Republic and a return to constitutional government in America. The themes of our campaign are God, family, and the Republic.
Yeah, I totally agree. Hey, let's do this, man. I'd like to apologize. I was really out of line.
Which was essentially...
Yeah, really. I mean, it was really ridiculous. And I totally apologize, and it was my fault completely.
A moderate form of Islam.
Sure, and it was totally ridiculous. I don't know why I said that your fan club would like you to quote-unquote just do it. Like I was trying to say that they wanted you to do something that we all don't want. I mean, honestly, we don't. You're one of the best callers in this show's history. Don, you can totally agree with this.
Depending very heavily on Sufism.
Radio Dijla is not the Iraqi Rush Limbaugh or G. Gordon Liddy show.
He said he wanted to tell me how much better things for the Jews were now than before.
Spiritual and mystical side of Islam. Sufism has its... birthplace in Central Asia. But these extremist groups who come in from outside are very anti-Sufi.
Rikabi welcomes a good argument, but insists that listeners stick to ideas without making personal attacks.
Yeah, I mean, personal attacks like I was doing earlier with Suicide Man was totally out of line. Suicide Man, are you there? I mean, I really apologize. I feel bad about this. I really was totally just unnecessary. Mr. Man.
Try it at a gathering.
Suicide? Is that your first name? Oh, sorry.
One question.
Question for you real quick. Your fans really want you to do it, and I agree. I think you should do it. You know what I'm talking about.
Don't take advantage.
That's right, Suicide Man. I'm back. I don't apologize at all.
Because you could lose it.
Take him to KPFA, because KPFA is not going to have you anymore. That's right, Don.
Learn to
hey, Don,
face
I want
reality.
your job next.
Some of your friends may be boring you right now.
There's also a ban on any sort of incitement to violence.
Now this can be good.
Rikabi says it's been difficult to train DJs and listeners to keep a civil tone in their debates.
Any difficulty you have in making up your mind should be corrected.
Then he told me, when I was a young man, I went for a walk in the streets of your birthplace. I had a new fur cap on my head. A Christian came up to me and knocked off my cap into the mud and shouted, "Jew, get off the pavement."
By the fact that these groups lived together for centuries. They still don't know much about each other.
I asked my father what he had done. He said, I went into the roadway and picked up my cap.
A lot of prejudices in this country, and we need to know each other.
This struck me as unheroic conduct on the part of the big strong man who was holding the little boy by the hand.
The self-analysis revealed to Freud that he harbored ambivalent feelings toward his father. The feelings he had been aware of, respect, even veneration, love, admiration, coexisted with opposite feelings. They coexisted with feelings of disillusionment, disappointment, anger, resentment, and hostility. The hostility went so far as to include unconscious, before analysis, Freud was not aware of this, unconscious death wishes.
And give the right picture about each other.
I would like to offer my counseling services to that poor, tortured gentleman. I'm a suicide counselor. That's how I make my living in the real world.
Oh, I was totally right. I totally apologize. But
I understand, and I would be more than happy, though, to counsel you to commit suicide if it ever became necessary.
Whoa.
For your psychic healing, mind you.
Whoa. Did I tell you that actually I am the real suicide man? Do you ever think about that? We're in a parallel universe covered by religion.
It's the same tree. I think they can tell us apart.
Oh, I think they can't. Cause
Ever since 1982, I have graced these airwaves with my...
I've been calling since September 12th, 81. What do you think about that, suicide man?
I don't believe you.
Oh, believe me, because I'm Don Joyce.
Boy, if you ever take over, I'll never get on.
I'm never getting off.
Oh, you just might have worked hard enough at it. Leave him alone. Don't you understand?
Am I the real suicide man or are you?
What are you saying? What do you
I've
want?
discovered recordings documenting the beginning of how I was named that, and I will put them up on my website someday.
I have a musical suggestion for you personally.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Not you, the other guy.
Okay, go ahead.
S&M.
Oh, hey,
You should get yourself the new Ministry album and listen to a cut called
You hear the song
Word.
called Ministry of Suicide Man? Please do it.
We always spread our word.
I think that's a great idea. I will look for that.
I agree totally with that. What are we talking about? Don? Don,
musical?
Don, are you there? Don, it's got right here, I think. I don't know. I need a band.
They want to mobilize the Central Asians on this kind of militant brand of Islam, which to some extent they do.
You said a minute ago you used the word secular ideas. How does the secular Islam play any role in this?
Well, it wasn't secular. I mean, the Islamic revival took many shapes and forms, of which one was a very moderate form of Islam, meaning the revival of Sufism.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Question real quick, Suicide Man. I'll take it off the air. Question is this. We kind of taken a vote, and we're your fan club, and we think you should kind of do what your name says. You know what I'm talking about? Have you thought about it?
Sufism is extremely tolerant of other sects. It does not believe in, mixing up politics and religion. It is a very creative, independent-minded form of Islam, which is very anti-radical and anti-sectarian, because of course the radical trends of Islam are very narrowly based. You're either with them or against them. Sufi Islam is very broad-based. It believes in Muslims being allowed to study and belong to many different forms of Islamic teachings.
Is Sufism still a factor to be reckoned with in Central Asia, or has it been sort of eclipsed by the more militant parts of?
No, I think it remains a very important part, of Islamic belief. These militant groups, don't have mass support, I think. They have networks, they have underground networks, they have recruitment drives, taking young men, to train in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in Saudi Arabia. But, the broad, urban populations in Central Asia, people in the cities, people in the countryside generally, still very much believe in the Sufi tradition.
But in Afghanistan, the Taliban didn't have mass support when they first started either, did they?
Well, exactly. And I think, this is the danger in Central Asia, that, if these regimes do not reform, do not change their ways.
Yeah, the Sufis, they're okay. I like them. They like to dance, too.
These extremist groups are going to be able to expand and become much more powerful.
Through the radio.
Within civil society.
But of course, the radio is good because if you want to present yourself, you will be available for everybody.
But you know what's fairly unclear?
We are building a religion. We are now accepting callers.
He then began to understand that he also viewed his father as a rival
Totally. I mean, that's
for his mother's love.
Yeah, well, that's what he's been like the whole time.
And that would lead us directly to Freud's analysis of the myth of Oedipus.
In spatiality. Have you guys stopped to think that we're just a speck on this microcosm of a system of a reverse spatial complex cube, a hypercube, if you will? Why? Have you seen the movie Cube 1 and 2? Don?
Radio Dijla has featured interim government ministers on its programs, and one show is hosted by 2 clerics.
I find, in reading this and talking about it, is what the extreme Muslim groups actually want. Here they are existing in terribly poor countries without a lot of structure. They're angry at the government, but it's not completely clear. I mean, they don't want more tolerance because they're not tolerant themselves. They're not really based on economics. They aren't saying we've got to give, bread and circuses to the people, or even bread. Are they strictly for some kind of a jihad, which is the name of your book? Or are they more broad-based than that?
Well, I think this has been one of the major failures of militant Islam in the last 10 years, that these groups, such as the Taliban, such as Al-Qaeda, and these groups in Central Asia, the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, Hizb ut-Tahrir, they have no agenda. They're not offering the people any alternative, the history of Islamic fundamentalism in the 20th century is extremely rich. It has an enormous debate and discussion.
Yes, this is Radio You Betcha, right here at KPFA, KPFB in Berkeley, KFCF in Fresno, KZFR in Chico. And it is All in Your Head, Part 7.
One Shia, one Sunni. In a non-judgmental tone, the 2 answer questions from the perspective of each Muslim sect.
Yeah, I totally agree. Religion is kind of like a mosaic, I'd say like a quilt, and it almost adds up to a perfect hypercube. You guys see the movie Cube 1 and Cube 2? Okay, I'm going to talk about religion again. Religion is something that binds us, similar to the Milky Way or Snickers. But
about,
a legitimate means of controlling the populace.
What kind of state should an Islamic state be? What kind of economics should there be? How should an Islamic state treat their minorities, treat women, deal with issues like education, health, etc.? These jihadist groups who've emerged in the last 10 years really have none of this history of this debate. They don't give you alternatives. They don't offer civil society an alternative to what kind of state they want to build. And I think this is one of the major failings. This is why the Taliban failed. And this is why the Taliban fell so quickly, because the Afghan people were fed up, because the Taliban were not offering anything to the people. And I think ultimately this is how and why these militant groups in Central Asia will fail, because they don't have an agenda. They're secretive. They don't believe in being able to, construe a debate within people. They don't have a manifesto. They don't give press conferences. They don't allow themselves to be photographed. They remain very secret organizations. And ultimately they will fail because they're not offering the population anything.
Ты только свои песни поешь? Ну нет, я всякие пою. Я вот сейчас песню записала.
And the Taliban partially fell because American bombs felled them.
Radio Dijla carries advertising for products like cosmetics and cellular phones, and Rakabi expects to turn a profit soon.
Сашки Барыкина к его юбилею. Песня старая, но настолько попала. Там такие слова.
He says he gets some disapproval for the station's ecumenical tone and the mix of Western and Arabic music.
От боли я пою. Просто как в воду глядел.
But for the most part, Baghdadis are voting with their phones.
Точно, совершенно. Не слышала я? Нет. Но когда больно и петь от боли получается натуральней. Не, ну это так, я говорю, что от боли. На самом деле на сцене это боль все уходит куда-то. Это потом уже с утроенной силой. А на сцене ничего не чувствуешь, кроме другой боли.
дашь ключи и свысока поднимешь бровь. Все, что смогла, я отдала тебе, любовь. Ты все взяла, ну что же, изволь. А мне оставь хотя бы боль. Осенний вздох стучит в виски, а впереди зима, зима, и от тоски щемит в груди. Я о любви хочу успеть, да не сказать. Нет, не сказать, а просто спеть. Спеть. Ничего я не жду в мире целом. У любви на виду, под прицелом. У судьбы на краю, в зимнем поле. Все стою и пою, я от боли я пою. Люблю, но эта боль, как тайный знак моей судьбе. О чем бы я ни пела, все лишь о тебе. Хотя бы раз еще успеть, да не сказать. Нет, не сказать, а просто спеть. Ничего я не жду в мире целом. У любви на виду, под прицелом. У судьбы на краю, в зимнем поле. Все стою и пою, я
right. Hey, this is completely exciting here. I mean, I feel like it's something special. The night's beautiful out there, and you guys look great, you know. Listen, if my voice is a little weird, it's because I'm using one of those lapel mics here. So I just got the thing, and I wanted to try it out. Anyway, you don't have to worry about me singing right now, because sometimes there are things to say that just have to be said, and tonight, I just have some things that I want to say. And since there isn't much time here, I'll speak sort of fast and at least communicate to you what I feel are some important ideas. I mean, first, we have to agree that there are some pretty terrible circumstances happening around our globe. I mean, once we understand that this world is a lot bigger than our own little lives, we develop compassion, and that is, after all, the first step toward religion. And religion is the first step toward acknowledgement of your soul. And this soul awareness shows you that the slogan, I think, therefore I am, is completely retarded. I mean, think about it. I mean, most of the tragedies that befall us are meaningless. I mean, instances of mass murder, devil worship, Dan Quayle, the Fox Network are all manifestations of human neurosis. The real tragedies of our time are ecological, right? I mean, the dying rainforest, the storage of nuclear waste, the extinction of magnificent animals, our shattered ozone, not to mention the Union Carbide explosion in Bhopal that's so easy to forget about, and now this Alaskan oil spill. I mean, that's such a catastrophe that we'll be suffering for this alcoholic mishap for generations. That's a nightmare. I don't want to bum everybody out. In effect, our life on Earth is actually becoming more balanced. I mean, true, we destroyed the physical wherever we went, but what do you expect from a patriarchal society? I mean, the Earth has suffered a long time because of man's arrogance and greed. I mean, I asked a friend of mine recently, what's our biggest problem? Is it ignorance or apathy? And he said, I don't know and I don't care. I mean, but that's one guy, right? And meanwhile, the Kundalini is rising like a snake from a lake, coming into the deer and squirrel and fox and elk and horse and cow and pig and bear and mule and bat and chicken and eagle and raven and redwood and elm and pine and sequoia and oak and sycamore and maple, and through the river and stream and lake and pond and creek and ocean, through the corn and cotton and wheat, the pears and the mountains, swirling in silver spiral rhythms around the Earth. The everlasting, incomprehensible, invincible soul of humanity is prevailing. I mean, the only real safe deposit box you have is your heart. The world sort of passes like a dream or a movie with good guys and bad guys, and they advertise and they advertise and advertise and advertise. Hey, there's a new galactic hologram of crystal electrons throbbing so fast that all you perceive is a jump, and they never bump. They never bump, and they never jump. Ooh, I blew the line again. I mean, they never collide when they ride. They don't cry when they fly. They don't give up, right? It's like a purpose under heaven. We're living in a parallel universe, a reflection of a reflection. Two mirrors face to face, becoming nothing, becoming everything, hiding behind the kiss. The temptation to possess time and space. If we know anything, it's that we know nothing. I mean, why is it that in America on the 4th of July, the only people celebrating are all illegal aliens? So we're all getting healthy and drinking bottled water, and while our bodies purify, our planet builds up an unprecedented amount of little plastic bottles. Bottles that refuse to oblige the law of erosion. But maybe this is natural. I mean, maybe the Earth is a big houseplant and we're the aphids, right? I mean, we can't hate ourselves for destroying the planet. I mean, come on, we're all responsible. We've begged Exxon to maneuver boatfuls of oil around in treacherous ocean so that we can have fun till our daddy takes our T-birds away. So you can't cry over a drained cow. If we can't learn to love ourselves and others, then we'll never enjoy a psychic civilization. I mean, what's unnatural about a candy wrapper? It's nothing more than a piece of wood that humans have modified. I mean, we thinned it out into paper and put color on it, and then we get pissed off when we see it in the forest. I mean, I think if we could learn to love litter, then we could love ourselves. I mean, everything we know or ever could know comes from such a phenomenon. I mean, we regenerate a spirit of revolution, and the next thing you know, someone is handing you an interdimensional thread. So suppose you were to take the thread and you were to synchronize your personal memory circuit to the ever-present knowledge of all it is or ever will be. You would immediately have a Mayan memory. You would have an Egyptian fit. You would access yourself to a time when disease and war are memories. You could feel elated. You could eat an eclair, but it's a thought eclair. You materialize your eclair in the air. It's an air eclair. And once again, you wake up and find yourself in a dream. When you're happy, it makes you happy. When you're sad, it makes you sad. And the only time you're ever really clear is when you're really clear. So the first and final reason for our being here is to love. I mean, let's face it, the only thing that ever felt good was not LSD, not sex, but falling in love. I mean, goddammit, I said I wasn't going to sing, but I can't help it.
It is the fate of all of us to direct our first sexual impulse towards our mother and our first murderous wish against our father. Oedipus shows us the fulfillment of our own childhood wishes.
In that myth, Oedipus unwittingly, unknowingly, meaning unconsciously in our terms, marries his mother and kills his father.
With the Oedipus complex, Freud theorized that people have their own internal mythology, created from their earliest childhood experiences. He thought that religious beliefs were merely projections of our own fears and desires.
The indications of this ambivalence in the attitude toward the Father are deeply imprinted in every religion.
What Freud saw was that our Father who art in heaven and our Mother who art in heaven were the idealized parents of childhood. So the Heavenly Father, the Divine Mother, for Freud became the king and queen of fairy tales.
God was the exalted Father, and the longing for the Father is the root of the need for religion.
That's our criteria. The Beatitudes must be our criteria.
The new psychology was at that time sweeping through us all.
Digla gets about 12,000 callers a day.
We were all influenced.
The DJs answer as many as they can.
We were all concerned about fantasy or wishful thinking. I formed the resolution of always judging and acting with the greatest good sense.
Yeah, that's something that's really great, Don. Hey, this music montage, it kind of blows. Suicide Man, are you there? So I'm really thinking you should do it this time. End it for all of us. Please? Oh, Lord, they're coming. The monkey people?
Even if you, got everybody to understand that it was all in their head and they gave up on their idea of religion, I think they would still fall into many traps, like they believe in psychics or quack medicine or something, because people seem to have a need to just grasp out at something other than natural, something special. They just have that need to get that supernatural thing in their life.
He was saying that all youth at that time were trying to escape from wish fulfillment dreams. They got that from Freud, and they wanted to, in one way, spit on the images of their youth and go on to they knew not what, but anyway leave that behind because it was juvenile.
Lewis was writing a long poem called Dimer. In it, he portrayed belief in God as a tempting illusion, one that had to be resisted. But he found that in his own life, he wasn't so certain. The question of God's existence would not let him go.
See, this is the issue. People read Scripture and reach different conclusions.
That's what Scripture's supposed to do. Scripture is not a driving test. Scripture is a chance moment.
It ain't necessarily so.
Scripture is the whole Scripture, but we don't believe it's frozen in time.
Why are you a Christian?
Well, because the Jesus story is my story.
Little David was small,
There's nothing else that really touches my heart and my spirit the way Jesus does. There isn't any other answer for me. There's no question about it.
Why are you a Catholic? I mean, the Catholic Church is still a paternalistic hierarchy. You are never going to be a bishop because doctrine forbids it. Your own Pope says never. So why do you remain a Catholic?
Well, we've said never to a lot of things. We're very good at never. And then we say 400 years later, as we have always taught. I'm a Catholic because I believe that the church is a treasure house of the Christian tradition.
You remember when the president called on the Pope earlier this year?
Yes.
You said something quite harsh. You said after the president did, I can hear them saying this. I can hear James Dobson and Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson say, I was called by God to do what I'm doing. You feel called by God.
I do, but I don't feel called by God to impose my life on yours. I believe that I'm called by God to keep God a constant question in the human heart. I believe that anything that isn't, that anything that uses God as an instrument of oppression on other people is not of God. And I believe that their belief is a powerful witness. I just simply do not believe that it can be imposed on the beliefs of people who are witnessing to another face of God.
What do you mean impose?
Well, I believe that when to have the voice of religion, to have the religious voice in the public arena, as far as I'm concerned, is very faithful to the intention of the Founding Fathers. Therefore, no established church, no single church or tradition that monitors and weighs and measures everybody else's attitudes, approaches, or moral decisions.
I was, at that time, living like many atheists in a world of contradictions. I maintained that God did not exist. I was also very angry with God for not existing. I was equally angry with him for creating a world. Why should creatures have the burden of existence forced on them without their consent?
More than anything, Lewis wanted to write poetry. And for that, he needed the security of an academic career. He applied for teaching jobs at Oxford, but college after college turned him down.
I was attacked by a series of gloomy thoughts about professional and literary failure. Such a rage against poverty and fear and all the infernal net I seemed to be in that I went out and mowed the lawn and cursed all the gods for half an hour. And a lord of oceans guards the way from all who would sail into their night blue harbors. Let me escape to the rim of the world, where the tremendous firmament meets the earth, and Atlas holds the universe in his palms. For there, in the palace of Zeus, wells of ambrosia pour through the chambers, while the sacred earth lavishes life, and time adds his years only to heaven's happiness. I was off once more into the land of longing. My heart at once broken and exalted as it had never been since the old days. I was overwhelmed. I called it joy.
When Lewis talks about joy, he talks about something that he labels the central theme of his whole life. But what he means by joy is not the satisfaction of a desire, but a desire that is more desirable than any satisfaction.
There was no doubt joy was a desire. But a desire is turned not to itself, but to an object. I had been wrong in supposing that I desired for joy itself. All the value lay in that of which joy was the desiring, the naked other, unknown, undefined, desired. I did not yet ask, who is desired?
The very experience of joy that Lewis had was an arrow that led to the target of belief in God. Lewis argued innate, deep desires do not exist unless they correspond to something that can satisfy them. If there is hunger, there is food. If there is sexual desire, there is sex. If there is curiosity, there is knowledge. So if there is the desire for this thing that is beyond this world, there must be something beyond this world.
I was going up Headington Hill on the top of a bus. Without words, and almost without images, a fact about myself was somehow presented to me. I became aware that I was holding something at bay. I felt myself being given a free choice. I could open the door or keep it shut. I chose to open. I felt as if I were a man of snow at long last beginning to melt. drip, drip, and presently, trickle, trickle. I had always wanted, above all things, not to be interfered with. I had wanted, mad wish, to call my soul my own. I had been far more anxious to avoid suffering than to achieve delight. You must picture me alone in that room at Magdalen, night after night, feeling, whenever my mind lifted even for a second from my work, the steady, unrelenting approach of him.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy blame. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day daily bread, forgive us our trespasses, we forgive those who trespasses. My Lord, amen. Hello? Let us all gather around the campfire and pray. Brother, are you flawed? Do you have sins? Brother, it's okay. You can speak about it. Bring it forth. Don't be shy. For ours is the kingdom and the glory and the high rises and the trailer parks forever. Amen.
It ain't necessarily so.
I believe that that's absolutely essential, especially in a pluralistic world where we're all looking for the voice of conscience in our hearts. But when you take the religious voice and you turn it into a religion in the center of the system, do it our way, there's something wrong with that.
But they are saying they're acting from moral concern, that they are trying to carry their moral values into the public square.
And so did the Puritans and the Prohibitionists. It was exactly, they believed that their moral values should be carried into the public arena. And we did it. When the Puritans did it, they burned witches, all in the name of God. When the Prohibitionists did it, they decided what you could and couldn't discipline yourself to do.
I so earnestly desired not to meet. Total surrender. The absolute leap in the dark were demanded.
But I don't hear these people talking as harshly as that. They're not going to burn you at the stake, although some of them might think you're a witch, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or pagan,
yeah,
a pagan.
Listen carefully for the twigs.
They're not, you see them as extremists like that?
I do. In many instances, when you begin to use that kind of religious criteria and translate it into law, into God's call for Armageddon, why are we in Iraq now? God apparently wants us there. Not my Jesus.
Well, then they would say we went to Iraq to overthrow a brutal dictator who was persecuting his own people and to prevent Iraq from becoming a terrorist haven. You know what they say.
Sure, and we have a terrorist haven in Iraq right now. We don't have the so-called dictator anymore, but if those are our criteria, then we're going to be, for religious reasons, in a lot of other countries in the next 12 months.
You think a movement like that is sort of destined to fail if there isn't a big military action against it?
Depending on the sources, Sister Joan, there have been 37,000 civilians killed in Iraq, or as many perhaps as 100,000. Why is abortion, a higher moral issue with many American Christians than the invasion of Iraq and the loss of life there.
Could I ask you that question? Because that is the moral question that brings me closest to tears. I do not understand that. You see, I'm absolutely certain that some of the people that we're killing over there are pregnant women. Now what do you do? Now what do you do?
I gave in. And admitted that God was God. Perhaps that night, the most dejected and reluctant convert in all England.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Repeat. Don Joyce has been me. Rabies check is needed. Don, why? Don.
Such children of the night. What music will make? I noticed that the women on these sound bites say a lot of sensible, intelligent things. But that guy really nailed it home, finally, for our side here, so to speak. Nothing feels better as when you fall in love.
Oh, children of the night, what kind of fairy tale will you tell us about Don Joyce biting a civilian? And oh, I'm children, now look at me, I'm on the radio.
Freud called religion an illusion.
He identifies in the language of religion and mythology terms that can be appropriated for scientific use.
I intend to open your eyes to the delights of true understanding. In fact, it's my intention this evening to take your minds on a journey and lead you from the darkness of ignorance to the light of comprehension.
Passion plays. I think he's drawing from the tradition of the horror movie. I think he's drawing from the action-adventure movie. There's all sorts of sources that
Let me give you a real question here on what image may be emerging. Some viewers have said that the brutalization and death of Jesus leave the audience with a thirst for revenge. In this sense, could we say that a new image of Jesus as a Savior demands, or at least inspires, vengeance? In other words, we feel victims of the terrorists. 3:11. And we want vengeance. We see Jesus another innocent, and he's brutalized, and we have this feeling of vengeance. Is there any of that at work here?
I think so, absolutely. I think, one of the themes of my book is that these various images of Jesus track cultural, political, economic transformations in the United States. And a key one we're in now is the post-9/11 era of terrorism, war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan. And the only question was, what kind of Jew was he? So tremendous reverence for Jesus, where he was compared to Moses and compared to some of the great prophets like Amos and other Jewish heroes.
Well, what distinguishes the theology of Jews for Jesus from Christian theology?
Soaked in sweat from walking to a place where I can rest.
So I ask you to shed the shackles of prejudice and conditioning and listen as though intellectually naked to my words.
The Republican Party is a religion. That's why the Republicans won and the Democrats lost, because the Democrats are actually just a group of people trying to figure some stuff out. Not necessarily doing that great of a job of it, but the Republicans, they got religion on their side, because they are, like I said before, their own religion. Thank you very much.
You know, I see it like a very sort of organic situation here. And has it changed after September 11th? What has changed after September 11th is that I wish for the opposite. I wish that there was a God that I could access and that it could be proven that I can access him. I wish that God had the telephone numbers in September 11th.
He retools pre-Christian Greek stories and sees them as oracles to the inner workings of humankind, and then arranges a scientific approach to understanding that phenomena within the structures of rationality.
Religions owe their compulsive power to reawaken memories of very ancient, forgotten, highly emotional episodes of human history.
And I would be it doesn't have to be an 800 number either. I gladly pay for the call, you know? That's what I wish. I wish that it wasn't such a big question, because in times like this we need simple answers.
Let us have faith.
Since September 11th, this, for me, that there's something out there and that I'm here, no longer meant anything.
Pack my bags so long ago, I can't remember home. I keep trying to find things inside my mind
Because every time I thought there was something out there, it turns into inevitably something opposed to me, something I have to define myself against, whether that's God, or whether that's a Christian, or whether that's a Muslim, or whether that's a Buddhist. And that's not my experience. My genuine experience of life is that there is nothing out there. This is all there is. And when you see the seamlessness of it all, that's what I mean by God.
Trying to get it right all my life, trying to see the sun on the run. Love, when will you come? I can't face the hours till death is
Some are working actively to hasten that day.
That's about it for part 7 of It's All in Your Head. There's more in mine and there'll be more in yours. In 2 weeks I'll be back with part 8. Barbara Golden and Crack of Dawn here next Thursday at midnight. Stay tuned for Puzzling Evidence. This is KPFA, KPFB, Berkeley, KFCF, Fresno, KZFR, Chico.
I'll be way, way up.
To create is divine. To reproduce is human. Man Ray.
Thanks.